her name. Self-love, her claim to fame. African who knows her name. Which stay up in your lane, never a hoe. YOLO, walls fall down like Jericho. She beat deep like ESO. It's 415 out of 510. Maryland first. Believe, dark matter of antiquity. Earth moves and she breathes. Fertile moon, cosmic seas. The first one to make the booty pop. Genesis building block. Mind keen like a hawk. Archetype, queen of the flock. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Black woman is God. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Black woman is God. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Black woman is God. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra. Really soft, but the game is hard. See, you wanna be in my shine. Don't wanna give me no glory. Life was a piece of paper, then I'll be the signatory. We ain't gon' suffer in vain. Back to say her name. My own and make it rain. Your birthright, my claim to fame. My intelligence, your nightmare. Crown jewel, very rare. Blackness is evidence. Definition of excellence. Watch me and my etiquette. I'm your mama and your specialist. The Vatican know the time spent. Been setting the precedent. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Black woman is gone. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Black woman is gone. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Black woman is gone. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra, Africa. Abracadabra. Really soft, but the game is hard. Booty soft, but the game is hard. Booty soft, but the game is hard. Booty soft, but the game is hard. We pledge allegiance to the spirit of the United States of Maryland and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under the goddess, indivisible, but all child free.
Well, you already know booty soft, but the game is hard. That was Africa, The Black Woman is God by Shapeshifter, Zakiya Harris, coming to you from Oakland, California. And I want to welcome everyone here to the room, to the circle, to the cipher, to the space. My name is Ashara Ekundayo. I am independent curator and cultural strategist. And this is our November edition of BLATANT. This is a beautiful forum on art, love, joy, rage, dirt. You know, we go in, and hosted by the Museum of the African Diaspora and Artists as First Responder as a platform. I am honored and overjoyed to spend a little bit of time today with two more Black women artists whose practices heal communities and save lives. Welcome my comrades, my sister Gia Hamilton and my sister Donna Okoro to the space, everyone, and to BLATANT. And what does it mean for us to like be intentional about creating space for Black women to speak, for our stories, expertise, recipes, and magic to be at the center of the conversation. And in celebration, of course, there's so much happening in the United States right now, and a lot of praise and accolades that should be being bestowed upon Black women are happening right now. And so this is one of the many beautiful programs that is being presented by the Museum of the African Diaspora out of San Francisco. And so, hey, y'all. How y'all feeling today?
Hey.
We got New Orleans in the house. We got Austin, Texas in the house. Yeah.
That healing video. Ooh. Yeah.
Thoughts? We're gonna do Atlanta, but thoughts?
Yeah, this grounded me. Ooh, all that energy. I needed it today, right? We were just talking about what a week, and it's Tuesday. Right? Just needed all that Black woman beauty and force and energy and love and vibration. That was So powerful to start off with. What a blessing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Dawn, what do you think? How you feeling about it?
I'm pumped. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Some of those like get me pumped up kind of anthem, you know. In the chat box, for those of y'all who are watching from the webinar, perhaps we can also drop it into the Facebook chat. I put the link for the exhibition. So the Black Woman is God is a movement and also an exhibition that happens yearly in San Francisco. Right, it's actually up on display right now at SOMARTS, as well as the African American Art and Culture Complex, both in San Francisco, and co-curated by Melora Green and Karen Siniferu. But that has been the anthem, you know, over these, I guess, 6 years that they have been gifting community with this amazing mantra and this belief and this understanding and how it manifests inside cultural spaces and in community on the streets, but you know, how we feel it in ourselves, in our bones, and on our skin, and in the land. So shout out to the curators and to the artists and to the over 80 Black women in films who have been part of the exhibition this year. It just opened last Friday, and
Yeah.
I just want to give some love to them, to those organizers as well.
All of that.
All of that. So we begin our time together with a land acknowledgement, always. And today I happen to be sitting in my home in Oakland, California, which is the unceded land of the Muwekma and Ramaytush Ohlone Nation. And to this land where, you know, we call the Bay Area, has a lot of special meaning, but you know, I want to always acknowledge that I stand as an artist, as a Black woman, an African woman, in solidarity with the First Nation folk, with the indigenous people of this land, and that this land is loved, beloved, and its energy stewards my creative practice. And so we want to honor that and the ancestors who came before us. And also for folks who are unfamiliar with the term unceded, I also like to share that that term really means that First Nation folk have never gifted, sold, but any way at all transferred the ownership of this land to the government, to the US government, or to anyone else. And so this is stolen land. You know, we're creating and living on stolen land. And so there's a sense of solidarity that I feel with my work as a creator and my role as a woman and as a mother and as a grandmother on this land, to hold space and to make space and to honor those folks. Dawn, tell me about New Orleans and your land and your work there on the land.
Me, so I'm in Austin, Texas, and I'm on Comanche land. And I saw that there are several different groups that own land in this area, but where I'm at is the Comanche land.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And Gia?
Ashe. Thank you so much for making space for us to acknowledge the land that we are on. I am here in what is known as New Orleans to most modern individuals, but this is the land of Bulbancha, which is called the land of many tongues. It was the land that was home to 82 indigenous groups of people, including the Chittamachas and the Homas, of which there are now only 2 indigenous nations of the original 82. And so thank you so much. Whenever we give tours at the museum, we start by grounding people in where we are and why that is important. So thank you, and give thanks to those ancestors. And I thank my African ancestors for their work on this land that allows me to continue the process of liberation for our people.
Ashe. Yeah. Let's start, or let's continue this part of the conversation that, you know, to talk about our work. I know both of you are going to, you know, share a little bit, you know, in the way of presentation, but when we are talking about and feeling into what it means now to like understand what blatant, boldface, brazen looks like right now. Let's talk about, blatant joy, blatant Black joy, blatant Black woman joy. Uh, Feel into that. Give me an example of like your last experience, and maybe it was 5 minutes ago, but your last experience of feeling into blatant joy. You know,
Mm.
how does that show up? I'm thinking about both of y'all are in the South. Texas is definitely the South. New Orleans is definitely the South. And, I live in this bubble up here. The Bay Area isn't like any place else in this country. But tell me about some blatant joy down South.
Mm.
For me, I would say I've been having to, especially during the situation that we're in. I occasionally have to find ways to find some joy, but like I'm a creator, but at the beginning of the pandemic, like I really just wasn't creating at all because I was just worried about my basic needs being met first, but now that I'm good, so I started getting back into it, and I've been feeling some blatant joy just from creating new works and experimenting more after that delay in time of making works, and just taking in all these changes, and so yeah, I think just blatant joy through creating art and being able to show that to people.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay.
It's,
Gia?
it's so funny. You said blatant, and I thought audacity, right? The audacity to find joy, to be joyful. And this year has certainly given us many reasons to pause, many reasons to question, many reasons to have a myriad of expressions. Our Mother Earth is so wondrous, truly. It makes me really emotional when I think about all of the expressions, of our earth, and the fact that this is a really simple thing, but with my children being at home, I used to homeschool them. And so now, instead of the mad dash into the productivity race of checking things off of a box to feed the machine, we roll out of bed with our PJs on, and we take a walk in the morning, and we do sun salutations, and we just listen to just listen to birds, we listen to traffic, we listen to whatever, and literally just take a moment in the morning to ground ourselves in the fact that we are here on the planet together. And as simple as that sounds, it has changed, profoundly changed, my relationship to everything. And it has also made me crystal clear that I will never go back to that other way of living. That this part of connecting in this way, especially with my family, is as essential as air. And that I want my sons to also feel that they are have the audacity to claim space and time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that. That claiming of space and time is exactly what it is. A couple of days ago, my partner and I got home from a quiet 4-week retreat of driving across the country to visit our family. And what does it look like to move across the country where some people are wearing masks and some people are not? Some people are understanding what it means to be physically distant from someone, and some people do not. And to move from California through Nevada, through Utah, Wyoming, Wisconsin, Missouri, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, back to California. So that's what we just did. and this idea of claiming and looking for joy in these spaces, because there are so many things you see when you're on the road, right? One of the things that we looked at were altars that we found, you know, spaces where we were honoring the dead, you know, along the road. But there were also these other places, and even sometimes in those same spaces of death memory was this joy, you know, these joyous pieces. So you see balloons and candy and sweet things and windmills and all of that, that's part of our conversation here. And that, you know, that this work and our work as the creative and the artist brings new imaginations, a radical imagination, as the term has, you know, come to be quite common. That's the space that we live in. So we'll keep talking about that, but let's start into the presentation. Dawn, if you could introduce yourself and your practice again, you know, where you're located at, and we're going to look through some images and some, I think, a little bit of video as well. And I'm really excited to share your work with everyone. And what's also been fascinating for me is that Dawn and I have actually never physically met. We met on Instagram through a mutual friend who was a DJ. It was like, check out this artist, and you know, okay. And she was like, check out this curator, and I'm like, okay, let's see what's going on.
Yeah.
So I'm all hyped about your work and been following now for the last year, and just excited to have you here.
Yeah, glad to finally sort of meet you face to face. Yeah, so I'm here in Austin, Texas. With my situation, like as far as I could trace back, I'm at least a 5th generation Texan, you know, through my mom, and then through my dad, like a 1st generation American. My mother is a Black woman, you know, Black American woman. My dad is Nigerian, but my parents split when I was a baby, so I grew up just with my mother and my stepdad. So I was fully immersed in American culture and didn't really learn much about the Nigerian side until later in life. But yeah, I've lived in Austin for a long time. As far as becoming an artist, my background is a little bit less traditional. I studied other things. I went to the University of Texas here in Austin, and I studied psychology and fashion design. And then, you know, I didn't really know how to be an artist still, and I was afraid to pursue that. And there was a you know, my family just wanted the best for me, so they wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer, you know, and you know, so I studied some other things, and eventually I went to law school. But once I graduated from there, I was at a point where, like, okay, I'm not happy with this. I want to be an artist. That's what I want to do. And then I just started really pursuing it from there. My work, I would say that self-reflexivity is a big part of my work. And reflexivity is the circular relationship between cause and effect. So I'm thinking about, you know, like on one level, I'm a woman who has been shaped by my environment, but on the other hand, there are ways that we can shape and impact our environments and our societal structures. And so I'm really influenced by fashion photography, music. You know, I grew up in a town called Lubbock, Texas, which is a smaller city. And I just didn't get to travel much as a kid. And I used magazines as a window to the world. Like, you know, my mom would get Ebony magazine, and there'd be a couple of pages in there that showed fashion, like the Black designers and some of the Black models on the runways. And I just like, I want to see that someday. So I'll show you just a snippet of some of my recent series that I've been working on in the past few years. So I'm gonna share my screen, just a second. Okay. So there's my studio here in Austin. Okay, so a few years ago, I started working on a series called Misogynoir Resistance. And for anyone that might not know, my misogynoir is a cross section between gender and race. So it's when a Black woman experiences misogyny and racism. And it was coined by a Black feminist professor, Moya Bailey. And I grew up, just during the peak of the music video era, and spent lots of time watching them. And I would notice how it was common to see women, just basically just used as props in the videos, and they were just kind of there to please the man. And so, as a kid looking at that, I was just thinking, oh, like, is that kind of like, is that's what's expected of me later, or like how how do I fit in this world? So I created a series of work where I had models pose kind of like they were in a music video, but I was trying to push back against misogynoir and try to show them in powerful poses, but it didn't always work out the way I wanted. But this is a piece that's called Workhorse, and then this is a piece called Not a Punchline. And so I had the woman pose like in a more of like a powerful look, like kind of almost like a superhero. But I'll show you an example of where when I make a portrait, I usually photograph a person first, and then I use those images as reference. But some of the images that I got through this series, they still weren't pushing back the way I would like. So I was thinking about an artist named Gary Simmons, who's from Brooklyn, and he did a series in the early 90s where he drew Black caricatures on chalkboard, and then he would erase parts of it with his hands. And so this is one of my paintings from that series. So I use like paint and sometimes like gold leaf to kind of cross out parts of the model. And it's a way to sort of push back against misogynoir, and it also the markings also show erasure, so they have different functions. And this gold leaf piece is from a series that's along similar lines, and it's called Deconstructed Vixens. And so for this series, like I took the video vixen. And some, like for this image, this painting you see here, the reference image is a still shot from a music video. And so I was taking the video vixen and then bringing them from the background to the foreground and surrounding them in gold. And I did that because I was also thinking about like in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, how gold leaf was something that was considered sacred. So I wanted to surround these women in gold, and they had become a staple of hip hop culture. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a snippet of an art video that I did a while back. So I'm just going to play a bit of it, and then I'll talk about it for a second. Okay, can y'all still hear me now? Okay, can y'all still hear me? Okay, cool. So yeah, that video is called the Bride, and basically it continues similar to like what you just saw, and it loops. So as I mentioned before, I have one parent that's Nigerian, but I didn't grow up with that parent, and I didn't really get to experience that culture, growing up. And I always wanted to connect with and embrace that side of my heritage. And so through my art, I try to reach out, in some ways. So this video came about because years ago when I got married, I had just a traditional American, like, white wedding, but my family had sent me a couple of I guess you could say, pieces of fabric to use as a gay lay, one for me and one for the maiden of honor. But because of the timing, there wasn't anyone available to tie it up for me. And so I thought, okay, I'll just go on YouTube and look it up and figure out how to do something. And so I did, and like the women that they were doing it on YouTube, they made it look so easy. And I tried, and I ended up not being able to use the fabric for the wedding. But just the video kind of is sort of, I guess it's sort of like, kind of shows a visual representation of like my struggle to connect with that side of my heritage. This is an installation view from my solo show Punk Noir. It's a show that I ended up touring, and unfortunately because of the virus, I had to stop, bring it to a complete stop in March. But when I created Punk Noir, it was something that I did initially for myself and for people like me. As a young person, like, in junior high, in high school, like I always, I was very quiet, very, very introverted, and just, I guess to the people in Lubbock, Texas, where I grew up, I guess I was considered, very weird, and so I had a hard time, like connecting with, with other students. I was tall, and I just kind of stuck out, but back then I wish that I knew that punk was something that I could, take part of and embrace. At that time, I didn't know it was for me as a Black girl, but then I later learned that, oh, well, Black people, are the ones that, that initially, created what, the roots of what punk is. So I painted people that I know, that are my friends, that all happen to be creatives. And so I wanted to just capture their energy, because I felt like they had a punk spirit, and I wanted to bottle that energy up and put it into these these white walls. And yeah, so we painted the walls to complement the subject that's on the painting, and just to expand the space that they take up. And so there it is. And here's another view of Punk Noir. And so I'm going to show you another quick video clip. And in this video, it's just going to be the process of painting that purple piece on the right. And that piece is called Roshi. And she's an artist that has done a lot of murals around Austin. And I feel like her work, her fashion and her personality, it's really seamless with her art. And when I was taking her reference photos, she did a back bend all the way back, and I was taking photos of it, and I thought I was going to do a painting of her in the back bend, but I liked the way that it looked, where she was just halfway there, just kind of suspended. And one thing I like is when people, here's the finished painting, when people see the painting, several people have told me that it makes them feel joy, it makes them think of joy. And the piece is really big, like 6 feet by 6 feet. And whenever I show it, people will pose like in front of it and try to do the same pose. And yeah, so that concludes my presentation.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I, into the back bend, into the stretch, into process, I think is really interesting that, you know, you are a multimedia artist and that you use fashion as well as part of the conversation that you're offering to us, but that you take photos, paint them, and then do something else with them. Uh,
Right.
is really beautiful, and really great. There's a question in the Q&A, and I want everyone to feel free to either put their questions in the chat or the Q&A from, it says, Mr. Breckenridge, how do you embrace the process between your craft and personal life? How do you balance it out? And so, you know, feel free to answer that question, and maybe it's also for Gia once you talk a little bit about your practice as well. But, you know,
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, I mean, I never found balance before. I'm sure it maybe exists for some, but you know, for me, there is no balance, and something always suffers. Now, I think for me, that comes in, you know, comes with constantly needing to hone in on my time management skills, maybe. But I just really just try to do the best I can to stay above water, and also it's really important to try to schedule some time where I don't have to do any work at all. You know, like maybe a weekend, a month, or something. You know, that's something I forget to do a lot too, because it's easy to get burned out. But yeah, I just try to stay afloat the best I can.
mhm. Yeah, I can appreciate that answer in terms of, you know, what is balance, and that's subjective. And as creatives, you know, you can balance something and not fall over. It doesn't mean that the balance has to be equal. You know, you can ride it out a bit. One of the things that's most interesting to me about your work and your practice, at least the visual pieces that are the gold leaf and the scratching and the revelation piece, the reveal, as we say, when we are talking about Black women and performativity, when we're talking about being able to show up and uh, being on stage all of the time. So this intersection that I'm looking at in your work, that is about the peeling away of, to reveal a particular aspect of our lives as Black women, but also kind of this slathering on this luxurious layer of gold leaf, and what that feels like for me, like the idea of like licking it or tasting it or peeling it off and putting it into my mouth,
Mhm.
and then having like this voluptuous picture of this woman in a back bend, or this woman like, you know, in this position, in her, you know, power position with her legs open. And so that intersection of performativity and yet kind of like regal presentation is really interesting to me. And so I appreciate it
Mm.
very much. And you know, it's like a gift. I feel like, oh, maybe I can get something, you know, that Dawn presents to me and that I get to scratch it off myself. I just feel like I want to open it up and see what the message is, see what the sister is saying to me. So I don't, Dawn, you know, you can take
Yeah,
that in.
I think that's why I like using and sometimes I'll use copper leaf as well. And I like, I like shiny things. And I think because it just evokes like a desire for that sensory experience, and like you mentioned, just that the shininess of it, it triggers, I don't know, just a desire to touch. So yeah.
Yeah, I like shiny things too. Looking at the headpiece that you have on, and I see it in a lot of your photos. Can you talk a little bit about who designed it? Did you create it, or?
So this headpiece, this is just something that I just bought at the store. I just liked it, and I started wearing it. It just kind of became my wig, I guess. But I liked it so much that I decided, well, I would like to make my own headpieces now. And so I've recently just started doing that. And so I bought some materials and just use some. So I've been using a lot. I mentioned that I use copper leaf. Well, for these new headpieces, I used copper material, and I used just different gemstones. And I made them recently, but it's definitely an experimentation and trial and error, because the headpieces that I made, that they're to show, and they're also for me, but they're not really very practical to actually to really just rock it. So, but I like the way they look on the mannequin at least. But yeah, I've been experimenting with making my own headpieces and things.
So is it part of the fashion practice?
Yeah, yeah. It's I think it was natural for me to start with the headpieces. I work with some other bits of fashion, like I'll take well, it's over there. I have like a jacket, and I'll paint on it. I'll paint some patterns that I saw, like in Nigeria, and different things like that. Like this hat is something that I painted. But I really want to get more into like making fashion from scratch. So, but that's what slowly getting more into doing that.
Okay, we're gonna come back to that. Do you have some reflections or some thoughts to offer to Dawn as well?
Oh, so many. We don't even have enough time. I mean, you said sensory, and it was just that, just absolute. I mean, having the background paint on the wall paint, just kind of draw you into each person's world, each person's experience. It was great just to see those shots, and the one shot where you could see 3 of the pieces together, and how like each one of them is its own world, right? And again, going back to that concept of the audacity for Black bodies to take up space, and to reinforce this idea that we're not a monolith, right? That we get to express ourselves in so many different ways. I really identified with the punk. I was a punk kid, and I didn't know anybody who was a punk kid, right? I was a skateboarder. I hung out with a lot of Vietnamese kids in New Orleans, as a teen. And I also just regularly describe myself as weird, right? And so just the adorning of self, the choosing, that having the ability to choose how you want to present yourself. You mentioned, Ashara, like just our positionality, like our performance, it makes all the difference when it's our choice, when we get to, and I really love how your own personal journey, gets tethered and tied to the other creatives in your community, right? And then we get to see this kind of plethora of expression, of folks defining their identity and defining who they want to be that day, that moment. And, that just, it's exciting. And then I totally, the gold leaf made me want to play, made me want to sprinkle, right? Splatter. Just going back to that idea of joy and how we use materials and how we get to play with materials. And that as a way of problem solving, of creating, the beyond what we see, what we experience, and what we feel. Just really, really profound. And I know I keep going back, but just honored to be a part of this. This is so healing, so healing.
I'm so glad I know we followed each other on social media for a long time. So I'm glad to finally see you. And that would be like, my dream would be to be able to like, the Punk Noir exhibition. I wish I could go to like New Orleans, to the Bay, to Lagos, and do something similar, paint people from that area that, that have that kind of spirit. But yeah, someday.
You put it out here, so we got to remember the date, right? We have it on a card, right? Ashara, you made sure that there is ephemera, so we can remember the time. We can remember that you claimed this. Yeah, it's so important. The other thing that it's really interesting is I want to reference a friend and I believe colleague of ours, or at least peer of ours, Sharifa Rhodes Pitts, who's a dear friend of mine, a writer from Texas. And we giggled one day about being in Generation X and how we would enter into creative spaces now, and the younger generation so blatantly, right, express themselves and we laughed about the fact that without the fear of being called weird, right? Like that there's this real acceptance of personal expression, and And then we had a little moment where we lamented and we're like, girl, do you remember when you wore such and such and such, or you shaved your head at 17 and how that was not cool at all? And right, we're like, we paved the way. It was like one of those moments, right, where we kind of accepted this eldership, right? Like, yeah, we paved the way for like this generation to express themselves. It was a moment of pride.
Yeah,
So I at work, there was
weird.
pride.
They have like the Afropunk festival and different things like that, and so yeah, it's no longer it's more mainstream now. So
Absolutely, absolutely. But also the fearlessness and the beauty of how the next generation of folks are like continuing to push beyond, you know, the kind of bounds of comfort, right? And expectation is powerful.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Shout out to the weird girls. To the
Shout out to the weird girls. Yes, right.
I mean, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, so you know what up. We listened to all the music. So the punk was there, the rock was there, the blues was there, all of it was there, and it was normal. So we all knew that. We were all tapped in, and honestly, like you just shouted out Afropunk. Shout out to James Spooner, the tattoo
Yes,
artist,
James.
the filmmaker. Before there was a festival, there was the badass indie film. It's
Yes.
like,
Shout out to James. You know, so much, right? I'm thinking, I mean, and that was literally at a point in New York where I was there in the 90s. I had just gotten there. And I, for the first time in my life, was like my tribe, right? Like it was like, you know, Tamar Kali, right? Just thinking about her work, thinking about Imani Asuri, thinking about Jessica Care Moore, Greg Tate, right? Like just
Black Rock Coalition, all of
yes.
that.
Yes.
Come on.
We right? We were vibrating together, like, yes.
You know, became Most Def, who became, come on, all of that. I mean, okay, we're gonna get, but let's go here. Let's go. You're setting it up. You're setting it up for the work that you do. My friend, many of y'all know I have been I've been a fan of yours for a long time, you know, as another person, another witch who creates space, who literally makes space. And so I pulled out 2.5 minutes of a video of you talking about your work as a curator, as a creator. So I want to start your presentation with that little piece there, because I felt like I was standing in the mirror listening to myself. So, Gia Hamilton, let's hear a little bit, and then you can talk us through what we're going to see. And thank you to Elizabeth.
I use my power and influence to have an impact in any environment that I'm in. So I like to say that I'm an influencer, that I think really deeply about equity. I think really deeply about the creative process. I'm used to like working on behalf of others. I create environments. I make other people feel comfortable. I try to put other people at ease. Like as a healer, what I try to do is care for people and to create environments where they feel cared for and they feel nurtured. It's ethereal, it's invisible a lot of times. If I do it well, people don't know that I'm doing it. It's about trying to read a room and understand how to bring an equilibrium and make people comfortable. And so a lot of that means like I can't focus on myself. I have to focus on the physical space, the people, and the content that I want to share with them, and how to use improvisation, how to use my skills as a healer to like shift energy to make sure that that's okay, and to key into things that are really nuanced that maybe other people wouldn't see or notice. My curatorial practice is centered in raising the visibility of things that are not seen or known. And in this case, in New Orleans, that really has to do with raising the visibility of artists who don't have a platform, who don't get seen, who would often be excluded from the art market. And so my job in that sense is to make sure that they have a place, a physical place to show work, to share, to be considered. And the work that I do, I think, is not just about visual artists or musicians or dancers, but is really about trying to honor the creative spirit within each human being. And I think some people claim that as their profession and the thing that they want to do, that they're dedicated to. But I'm always really interested in how to bridge the gap between people who consider themselves creatives and people who don't know that they are creative. Because ultimately, I think if we want a better, more equitable, sustainable society, we have to use imagination, we have to think creatively, and I think artists are uniquely trained to think in that way and to act in that way and create things. And so I feel like artists are sort of at the forefront of bridging the gap between where we are in society now and where we might be in the future. And in order for us to get there, we have to be able to visualize it. We have to be able to make it real and tangible. So my work is really as this cultural steward who creates spaces, physical, conceptual spaces for artists and creatives to do their work, to lead.
Yeah, there it is. Perfect. So, Gia, are you there?
I'm here. I'm here.
Introduce yourself to our audience today. And
Hi, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure. My name is Gia Hamilton. I'm here in New Orleans, place that has my heart and a lot of my spirit when it's not off dancing in other places with other kindred spirits. I, I always start off by saying I feel like my chosen title is a shapeshifter for liberation, right? That's my chosen title because I like acquiring new skills. I like thinking about things and just doing things, and I'm a worker. You know, it's like whatever thing is needed in order to create some liberated space. Um, I act, you know, in my day-to-day life as the new executive director and executive chief curator for the New Orleans African American Museum, which is a 2-acre campus, historic campus in the middle of Treme, which is one of the oldest Black neighborhoods in the country. And we recently reopened the museum after it had been closed for 7 years. So I think what I'm known for in the art world is, you know, I have a curatorial practice, and that practice is really rooted in land, labor, and cultural production. So, you know, the stewardship of the land part is really important to me. You know, I'm not looking for titles. I'm not looking for prestige of a particular institution, but the land is actually kind of feels like it calls me to it. And I'll give a couple of examples. You know, I recently did a project on Bayou Road, which is on a 5,000-year-old Chitamacha trail. It was a trading trail from the river to the lake. This is here at the New Orleans African American Museum. And so what's interesting is that was 6 years worth of work. And now I'm about a mile away on the same 5,000-year-old Chitamacha trail, right? That has a different street name, which I'm not even going to give credence to right now, but it's on that same trail. And so in many ways, I feel like the ancestors have kind of asked me to expand the work that I started 6 years ago, and to expand the sort of knowledge base and the possibilities of this particular space by both acknowledging, again, the indigenous ancestors and the African ancestors. And so what feels really important to me in this work is that we have to build new models, right? If we want artists and creatives to continue to be able to do the work, I find that my work is creative when I'm building a new model that allows the expansion of the creative community. And at the museum, that really is about pushing past boundaries. So here we are, you know, talking to Simone Yvette Lee, who is a master ceramicist and visual artist who has done just a number of pieces, and of course will be included next year in Prospect New Orleans, Prospect.5. And she so humbly came to our tiny little museum in New Orleans to share her work and her vision for grounding the land in New Orleans, right? We have had a number of monuments that have been taken down in New Orleans. We hosted an exhibition around monuments and what that meant as a participatory practice. And Simone is really here talking about her sculptural work, and the kind of proposition around what a monument can be. It feels important, in the same way that you grounded us in this process of acknowledgement, to make sure that the spaces that are created, that I help to steward, are multi-generational spaces, right? I'm really interested in how we bring people together, to have different experiences that push them, that help them to see themselves past who they are right now, right? And I think that spaces like this beautiful villa that was designed by a Black architect, you know, that was run by a Black woman in the 1800s, these kinds of spaces give us the physical materials to tell those stories, to help us to bridge gaps, space gaps, that really make, I think, the work interesting, in the art world now, which is the history of a thing, right? The calling the thing before it was named, before it was colonized, and the calling forth those sort of ancestral spirits is really important for us to even get to the contemporary work, for us to even talk about this work in the future, right? And so here we are in Miami, where we were interested in notions of the global South, in Miami for Art Basel. We worked with Urban Philanthropies to take over a 55,000 square foot space, and it could have been a reality TV show because it was space in Overtown, Miami, which is a Black neighborhood in Miami. And the goal was really to, again, ground the space in possibility, not for the Art Basel viewer themselves, but really for the neighbors, for the people who had been a part of that community, who just had a parcel of land, right? That was quote unquote blight. And we wanted to show solidarity and camaraderie within the South, that our voices, our bodies, our visions, our creative talent, our entrepreneurial skills all mattered in that space. And so Welcome to the Afrofuture was really an opportunity for us to do that. We brought 33 artists from around the global South, worked with artists who were from New Orleans, from Miami, from Mississippi, from Atlanta, to really come together again and say, like, the South has something to say. And the South, you know, has this untapped energy in the contemporary world that is important to pay attention to. And so we did that, and we grounded it again in this history that, yeah, we could be here as these young folks, you know, putting forth contemporary work, but it was really meaningless unless we acknowledge the elders who were on this land doing this work. In this particular neighborhood, right, there were so many people, like the Lyric Theater and the people who started various institutions. And so again, it became this sort of melding of the history, the bodies, their work, their vision, and really trying to marry them with these new visions and these new ideas. And what we want people to experience is a time-space continuum. We want people to be able to go forward and backward in all of the ways, and to put forth a new way of thinking about the contemporary. So this amazing artist, who is a tattoo artist and a visual artist here in New Orleans and a muralist, you know, came to Miami to work with local muralists, to talk about our heroes in New Orleans and the heroes in Miami, and the similarities and the differences, and to put forth this work and to really ground this space. And you know, we had young people who were getting face painted and body painted and kind of transforming themselves, while they were watching performance, while they were taking in visual work. while they were listening to artists, do artist talks and talk about their practice and the how to and the maintaining a studio practice. So it really for us felt like an opportunity, in space to acknowledge what was, what is, and what is possible. And I always love this photo because the babies and the way in which they experience the work for me is always so inspiring. I bring up intentionally that I'm a mother. I'm a mother of 5, and that my relationship to my children really grounds my practice. It helps me to understand humility of what is possible, what I get to do, the audacity of what I get to do, and the fact that I don't have to hide aspects of who I am, and that I get to be my full self and talk about how my full self influences the aspects of my work. And so we're really thrilled to be able to launch next year at the New Orleans African American Museum our signature program called Build a Nation, which is kind of 3-pronged. One, it's really thinking about trades, lost trades. In New Orleans, metalsmiths and plasterers and carpenters, those are master men and women who physically built the city. And we want to return our homage to these artisans, and we want to connect them with the young people. We want to put forth a program that really centers Black art and art historical moments alongside economic and political movements that have nothing to do with the European aesthetic and canon, right? We want to do it devoid of, as centering ourselves and what is important to us. And then we want to also give an opportunity for our cultural producers, our creatives, our artists to really be entrepreneurs if they so choose to, and to really help give them the skill set, the resources to do so, so that we can continue to be self-determining. So, for me, it's funny, my curatorial practice is a way of life, right? It feels like it is a part of like purpose work. It is a part of choosing to be in and on space and land, working with people who are tribe and kindred, expanding the network and the web, and constantly pushing us to think about what we want to see in this next phase of our iteration, our evolution as human beings. And just going back to this idea of the Black woman as God, right? We hold this in our physical bodies, in our ethereal bodies. And so I find that like when I'm working with my peers, my colleagues, my tribe, it's like we just get together and there's magic. And just like tonight, right? There's so many things that you've both said that inspire, that are now existing in my physical body, right? That will be connected to. So I just, yeah, my practice is really centered around the time space continuum and making sure that it is grounded in true purpose and in something that my ancestors will feel proud of, and that they can feel also that experience of liberation in the here and now.
Mm-hmm. I'm just over here going, Yeah,
Tribe, that kindred energy.
the conversation around ancestral memory, ancestral wisdom, and the knowing that we are on that timeline. Those who came before us, those of us in the body now, and those of us coming, waiting in the wings, as we say. And the conversation, as you said, the grounding of this at that intersection of land and culture and spiritual practice as well, is deeply important. And we, often we pour water, we pour libation, we empty, liquid from one vessel to the other, and knowing ourselves as that vessel of water. And those of us who have held another body in our body, know that we all breathe, all of us breathe through that element of water. So we talk about land, artwork, creativity, like water is essential, cannot be on this planet without it, without being nourished by it, because this body is water, So um, there's been so many emotions in the last few weeks. And I know let's say the last 4 years, let's say forever and ever, but the last 422 years, the last 4 years, let's talk about blatant rage for a minute. Let's talk about what the hell? Like, what is going on? Don, I see you over there shaking your head. Tell me, Texas and rage and Black folk and Africa. I mean, and specifically, as you said, you came into an understanding of your Nigerian heritage later in life, but what has been rage, SARS, raging, and how that entered into the conversation, at least, in the creative community. You see it inside social media. It's like, how did this particular conversation around rage in Nigeria enter in? So many conversations don't enter into our American thought process. Has your family, your crew, your friends, other artists that you work with internationally, uh, conversation around SARS and rage and protests and uprising, and how does this show up for that?
Yeah, it's been interesting because like here in America, well, or this summer, George Floyd was killed, and then I guess that sparks like a renewed sense of a renewed call for racial justice. I guess in June, and then I hear about this happening in Nigeria, with this violence with the police, and so yeah, I mean, I'm happy that my family is okay. As far as as far as I know, they're okay. But like, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just so much. There's just so much going on. And like you said rage. I mean, that's pretty much a good way to put it. That just the frustration. Just the lack of movement. Within the government. Earlier, this summer when the killing of George Floyd happened, I posted a picture online of a painting I have. This actually from years back, but it's actually called Rage, and it's a Black woman, and for this, like for the actual reference photo, she was painted black with like black grease paint just to make her completely black, and then she just screaming, just yelling, and then so I put that on canvas as well, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to that emotion and that gesture as well.
Yeah. For some folks might not know what we're referring to. So SARS is the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, which was put in place in Nigeria to protect civilians from armed robbers, but instead it's the police who extort and attack and harass young folks. So, my understanding is that, people who showing up with like nice cars and nice clothes, they get profiled and then taken advantage of. So, the fact that this story entered into the creative community in the United States, particularly for Black folks, I thought it was very interesting because it seemed for me to come through the artist community. And so this platform, this blatant platform, is part of this artist as first responder conversation that says, I want to highlight and uplift the stories of artists whose work and their practices heal communities and save lives. And I'm wondering if there has been, even Gia, in New Orleans, some conversation from the artist, creative, cultural maker, artist labor community around this particular level of rage. And then, other things going on, of course, around the election, around voter suppression, around Black women being killed, around, little sisters sleeping and still no one being, charged with murder, doing nothing, just sleeping in our dream state. has there been some conversation, either of you, around how this rage is showing up in these various ways, but particularly around SARS?
Yeah, I also found it fascinating and interesting. And I agree with you. My own relationship to even understanding SARS was directly through the arts community. It was through Instagram arts community. And which tells me that, like, artists, creatives, like, we're always tapping into something that we might not even be able to articulate in the moment. Like, there's a thread, there's a thread, there is that invisible psychic energy that really it like pulls us. And I thought about, I've been thinking a lot about just our relationship to colonization, our relationship to whiteness, and our and blackness, and our reality. Like, even in what many of us, I think, in the States, in the West, would think is a kind of Black reality, is still colored by a relationship to colonization,
Right.
to hierarchy, and to wealth, and to greed, and to acquisition. And 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 so it really brings me back to this idea of, like, what does liberation look like for us? Like, how do we attain liberation? Um, and of course, there have been a couple of really brilliant podcasts around, like, decolonization of the mind, and the body, and how we get into the body to do that. And just like that, quite frankly, indigenous folks, Black folks, like, we are the leaders of it. Like, we have to actually really begin to question our own, relationship to, these realities. And so it's become important. Again, once again, I always go back to these conversations around, like, I'm having usually with my children about, like, their dual experience of both being, like, oppressed and also highly privileged, right, individuals. And the need for them to understand how the majority of Black and Brown people live in the world, and how vastly different their own experience is in the States, right? Even as they are hunted, even as they are oppressed, even as you know what I mean? And man, just having to bring in, quite frankly, artists to help explain, the dual consciousness.
That's right.
Yeah. And just continuously sort of saying, this is a process. This is an untangling. This is a unraveling of. And so having to remain humble in that, it's like, I don't have there's not a finite answer or pinpointed solution.
Yes.
Aside from what I will say is listening to, believing, and protecting Black women.
Come on.
So
That is, as we come up on time, that is what we always come back to. Loving,
yeah.
seeing, honoring, and protecting Black women. Dawn, did you want to add something to that, in terms of rage and showing
Yeah,
up?
I think when it comes to artists, and really when it comes to artists, especially like on, like, say, like social media, a lot of artists, like, sort of have their own communities that kind of are, or they kind of surround their work. And I was thinking about how, this isn't necessarily art, but I was thinking about just how photographs can be so impactful. And so I saw, I forgot when it was, but a few weeks ago, when people were sharing this photo of a man. I think he was like a Lagos man that had just been on social media hours before, and then, like, he got killed, just swept up in the SARS thing, and like his bloody body was just there in the photograph. And people were showing it, and it's very graphic, but I feel like, sometimes it takes the power of the image to really show people like how dire the situation is. But yeah, that's something that, that really struck me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, as you know, as we close out the show, a couple of things. One is that we want people to take a minute to fill out the virtual program survey. I know that's been dropped into the chat. We also want people to think about what it means to financially support institutions, specifically institutions that are unequivocal and unapologetic about centering Black life, about Black creativity, and for me, my Black radical feminist perspective and curatorial practice is about supporting Black women. But you're also able to support this museum, to support the Museum of the African Diaspora. And so you can go online to moadsf.org and you'll see donate there. You can also do it by text. And you can become a partner or have another organization or one of your organizations become a partner. Oh, thank you, Elizabeth, for forwarding over to that slide. 56512, you can text. But as we close out this show for Dawn and Gia, who I have such a deep gratitude for your time and your space today around BLATANT in one breath, like a one breath kind of response. What can you personally commit to in terms of reframing the resources and the energy being extracted from Black culture and from Black women specifically? What can you do to reimagine and reinsert that energy for our creative, financial, spiritual, and economic well-being, and as creatives, as art workers and art laborers in this day? In one breath, close us out. Gia, Dawn.
I will share what a appropriate question to end on. I used to run a farm and a healing space called Gree Lab many moons ago, and it never completely went away. It has shifted and transformed. And I have recently created a restoration retreat and fellowship whose sole purpose is to really work with Black women to acknowledge our labor and to redefine our negotiation of our labor for ourselves. And so it is really about having a paradigm shift. It is a project that I'm looking for funding. I know that the museum will be housing this program at some point, but it is separate from the museum. It really is about taking Black women and offering us time and space and an abundance of resources to really reset, so that those words that we say that we want for ourselves and the sisterhood become our actuality. It becomes our reality. And it is padded with some of the most brilliant minds who are doing this work, who will be many of the practitioners who will be working with us. So I'm really thrilled about that, because it is both important for myself as a person who, definitely takes the rage and oftentimes internalizes it, right? And then the body has to deal with it, right? And for the sisters, the Black women, the Black bodies who I would like to be in communion with, to reimagine this world together. So I'm excited about this, and I don't know what's on the other side, but that's what I'm contributing to right now.
Thank you. Dawn, your commitment?
Yeah, for me, I think it would be important to be the mentor that I needed when I was younger. To especially for Black women, young Black people. But before the pandemic, I had the opportunity to visit some schools, and and I got to talk to some children, like from kindergarten to like junior high, and talk to them about what I do, show them some of the things I painted and what I'm doing, and just to be a Black woman, Black face that's able to do this. And I have one coming up in December where I'm gonna speak to some children at a school in New York, but it'll be, you know, it'll be virtual this time. So yeah, I think it's very important just to be able to be there for the young people that need it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Yes, mentorship, extremely important. I've had the gift of having several Black women be my mentor over the last maybe 30 years
Wonderful.
of life. And so that is deeply important. Representation matters, as we know, as we see and we understand. I want to thank you both deeply from the bottom, you know, part of my heart space and the chakra space that says gratitude, you know, to you all for both of your commitment and your work and your creative process, and just for being blatant, you know, with it. I know up on the screen we have the link if you'd like to look at the ephemera that gets created from these conversations that we've been having, you know, COVID inspired, you know, conversations. There is the blatant zine that you can look at and download for free. And then we're going to continue this conversation. And so next month, I'll be joined, as I am on every third Tuesday of the month, by Senator and Lady Phoenix. And so that conversation will unfold on some whole other level, of course, around the Afrofuture, the Afro now, the Afro past, but a specific kind of, I think, intelligence that both of these artists are going to bring to the conversation. So we want to thank Art Bridges for sponsoring both this program and all of the digital programming on the Museum of the African Diaspora's intense and robust platform. And of course, I want to thank all of the artists as first responder partners, which include the African American Art and Culture Complex, the Wakanda Dream Lab at Movement Strategy Center, the Akanadi Foundation in Oakland, California, the Women's Foundation of California, and the Recast Grant at the City of Oakland. And just thank you all for sharing an hour and 15 minutes with us, and hope to see you again. Please consider donating to the Museum of the African Diaspora and follow all of our programs and our platforms. Have a beautiful rest of your evening, this new moon in Scorpio. I love you, Gia. I love you, Dawn.
Oh, I love that. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. So great to talk to you both.
Good to talk to you. Thank you, Moad, for hosting us again this month. And we'll see you next month, inshallah. Yes.
All right. Bye.
Wow.